of Sunday night snoozer. It was a slop fest. It was ugly. The Pittsburgh Steelers last night reminded us all why nobody believes in the Pittsburgh Steelers. They sucked, and they got absolutely just demolished by the Chargers 25-10.
What a miserable and brutal and inept offensive performance from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, it was even worse than the final score indicates, because we got that one lone garbage time touchdown with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So it really was a 25-3 game. Fitz, watching Aaron Rodgers last night was really difficult. It was one of those nights when you're watching someone that has been great, that you know is one of the greats that will find themselves in their respective Hall of Fames, when it just makes you feel a little bit icky watching them. Like, it's kind of how I felt watching Tiger Woods, kind of limp on the golf course. Like, man, I don't want my last impression of one of the greatest, if not the greatest to ever do it, to be this, him struggling. That's how I felt last night with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers looked like he was 41 years old last night. Have we seen the last of Aaron Rodgers?
The hard part about it is old Aaron Rodgers is still better than most old quarterbacks because he was so great when he wasn't old. Follow me on this. When you look at some of his weeks, like early in the season, September 7th against the Jets, completed 73% of his passes. The next week, 55%, all right? Then 60, then 80, right? So we can't get consistency because I just think at his age, there are still flashes of greatness. There's still flashes of Aaron being Aaron. We've seen it, and there have been a couple of times you see where everybody's wanted to really find a way to buy in. And then you see last night where, to be clear, one of the interceptions I don't really put on him, but the other I wildly put on him, the safety in the beginning of the game. That's on Aaron Rodgers. You know you got Khalil Mack, who, by the way, is also 8,000 years old, coming at you and barreling down, and you're running around playing hopscotch in the end zone? I mean, how do you put yourself at that level of risk? I would expect that from Jackson Dart. He's young. He might be caught up in the moment. I don't expect that from Aaron Rodgers, who's old enough to be most quarterbacks' dad in the NFL right now. Like, at some point, you have to play smarter with the football when you can't just rely on your body to get you out of things. And some weeks it feels like Aaron Rodgers knows that. Some weeks it just doesn't. It was just so clear last night. The numbers 16-23, 161. The numbers don't do justice to how bad it looked. And that's why Aaron Rodgers had to answer about it. Mike Tomlin had to answer about it afterwards. Like, the fact is the Steelers have been broken all year, but they've won games. And so every week that we sat here for a month saying, well, why does Vegas believe in the Ravens? Last night was why. Because if you watch the Steelers, there's nothing to believe in here. Even if they find a way to sneak into the playoffs, huzzah, you're going to get your ass kicked. Like, if the goal was to bring Aaron Rodgers in because you wanted to finally win some playoff games and finally be Super Bowl relevant, well, you're going to fail this year. And last night was a reminder of everything that's wrong with the Steelers.
Yeah, you couldn't say, okay, it was a bad game for Aaron Rodgers, but I think at this point in the season, this might just be who he is. That at 41 years old, well, a lot of miles on him, let's be fair, he might not be able to, or I think we're seeing on full display that he can't play at a high level, at a starting quarterback level in the NFL for a full 17-game season. I know the Steelers beat the Colts last week, but it was a 7-point win after the Colts coughed off the ball 6 times. It's not because Aaron Rodgers did anything heroic. And then last night, it looked like everything was catching up with him. Like, we've seen at times, like the first week of the season when the Steelers played the Jets, of course, fueled by probably a little bit of anger and revenge. Aaron Rodgers, anger and revenge, who would have thought? That Aaron Rodgers looked reminiscent of his time in Green Bay. Like, he looked like MVP Aaron Rodgers. That feels like, Fitz, that was 17 years ago, doesn't it? Because he looks like such a different quarterback. He looks like such a different player. He looks like he's old. He looks like he's hurting. And I hate that. And I think we need to stop using Tom Brady as the comparison of like, well, Brady could do it. Well, Brady's the exception to the rule. And if we use Brady as, a comparison for every argument in the NFL, then we're going to have a whole lot of flawed arguments. Brady being able to play at the level that he played at his age is the exception to the rule, and Aaron Rodgers might just be human at this point, that at 41 years old, he can't be the missing piece for this Pittsburgh Steelers team.
I feel like NFL teams in general get themselves in trouble when they stop realizing what's the exception and what's the rule. If you're drafting an inaccurate quarterback and you're saying, oh, it's okay, we can fix that because the Bills fixed Josh Allen. Okay. Is that the exception or the rule. And that at some point you have to understand that. And, Frank Schwab has said on Inside Coverage for almost a year, just because we've seen one old quarterback go out and do it doesn't mean we should just presume Aaron Rodgers can also do the same. Tom Brady was the exception to the rule. I just think part of what we're seeing here, and I want to put part of the blame also on Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers, because as I watched last night's game, there were a couple of times for the Chargers on the opposite side of this in a winning fashion. They had some play calls that were absolutely crazy. Some great movement one way that tricked the Steelers defense while the play went the other. I watched and I thought, wow, that was really creative. Way to work around your weaknesses and find ways to confuse the defense. What were the Steelers doing last night that were ever supposed to confuse anything from the Chargers? It's like their offensive game plan was, we're just going to figure that Aaron Rodgers can find a way to get it done. I hated the 4th and goal, the fade route to DK Metcalf that gave them no option, and they had 2 players. It was double coverage. What are we doing? Like, Arthur Smith not doing a very good job. I'm not sure Mike Tomlin's doing a very good job. This defense has not been what anybody expected it to be. Aaron Rodgers looks old. Like, at some point, because the Steelers forgot what the exception was and what the rule is, they went out and they relied on getting lucky, and they just don't have that this year. So now what you have is a washed quarterback and an overvalued defense, and that's not a recipe for anything. I would tell you today, I have no faith that the Pittsburgh Steelers are actually going to the playoffs in the AFC this year.
This is the exact question that I was going to ask you, because yes, right now the Steelers lead the division. Yes, right now, if the season ended today and the playoffs started tomorrow, the Steelers would be in the playoffs and would have home field advantage. But they're sitting at 5-4. Does anyone feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be able to hold on to that top spot in the division? Because I don't. I think that the Steelers are just going to continue, piecing together enough to not be irrelevant, but not enough to make the playoffs. I mean, maybe there's a world where the Steelers can get in as the 6th or the 7th seed. But does this look like a Pittsburgh Steelers team that's going to be able to win a game in the playoffs? Not to me. Not if they play like they played last night. I don't think so in the slightest.
They're a game ahead right now of the Baltimore Ravens with 2 games left against the Baltimore Ravens. 2 games I think they're going to lose. And also, if you just take their record, they're in the playoffs right now because they would win their division. Outside of that, they have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs. If you had to bet your house today on who's making the playoffs, the Steelers or the Chiefs, we're betting on the Chiefs. And the problem
100%.
is the Steelers keep putting a Band-Aid on what's wrong with the organization. Like, I think we can all acknowledge, like, you need a quarterback. You can't always find a quarterback. And I get that. Like, they tried. Kenny Pickett was an attempt to find a quarterback. Russell Wilson was an attempt to find a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is an attempt to find a quarterback. But all it really does is consistently win Pittsburgh just enough games to get out of the hunt to actually go find the future at the quarterback position. Now, I can make that make sense in my mind. If you roll the dice and you miss on somebody that you think could be a multi-year option, you've got somebody in the room, hey, we thought we could get 2 or 3 years out of. Aaron Rodgers was never going to be anything more than a Band-Aid. So if you're going to put a Band-Aid on the quarterback position, specifically in Pittsburgh, you had to do it with the expectation of a Super Bowl. You don't Band-Aid the position to put your entire franchise back 10 years, which is what I think they're doing ultimately. They're putting themselves so far out of the range of ever solving the quarterback problem that if you're going to do that to yourself, then you best be in contention for a Super Bowl to make it worthwhile. Instead, you got an old quarterback with no future at the quarterback position, no real insight on how you're going to get ahead of all the other teams that need a quarterback for the future this year or next year. You just don't suck enough to actually solve the one problem that you got to solve. And so now all of a sudden you're just mired in mediocrity yet again, and it just doesn't feel like there's any solution for Pittsburgh.
And that's why I think that's the just misery of being in the mucky middle. That's exactly where the Pittsburgh Steelers find themselves. I heard Mike Tomlin saying, we're not going to apologize for making the playoffs. I get that. I understand that, because your job as an organization and as a coach is to win football games. But at some point, just making the playoffs with the expectation that you're going to get bounced by a team that's a legitimate Super Bowl contender gets frustrating. At some point, you do have to find a long-term answer at the most important position in sports, and that's at the quarterback position. Frankly, it doesn't surprise me that the Steelers find themselves where they are, which is pretty much exactly where they were last season. A team that's just going to barely scratch and claw and make their way into the playoffs if they make their way into the playoffs at all. But not a team that's going to make some noise. But I do want to look at the Chargers side of things, Fitzy, because of course the Chargers did get a win last night. We all watched it on Sunday Night Football on primetime television, a 25-10 win. This game, I think, went probably exactly how Harbaugh wants to win football games, gross and gritty and, just running the football and playing good defense. Look, a win is a win, and a win was great and all. I don't think I feel any differently about this Chargers team today than I did before that game last night, because Justin Herbert was good, was solid. The offensive line can't protect Justin Herbert. He got sacked 5 times last night. The offensive line injuries continue to hurt and to plague this team. Played well defensively, couldn't protect the quarterback. That's just kind of who the Chargers are, and that's what we saw last night.
The Chargers are 7-3, and they are absolutely barreling towards the playoffs. And you're right, there are fatal flaws, but also if you win the way that they have been decimated on the offensive line, for every fan base that sits there and says, oh, we're losing because look all the injuries on the offensive line, the Chargers can simply step back and say, hold my beer. You got nothing on what we've gone through this year. I think last night was a reminder that the Chargers are too well coached, too well quarterbacked, and have too much talent across the board to not be in these games week in and week out. I also don't think the Chargers are necessarily a Super Bowl team as we sit, but I understand what the Chargers are doing, and I understand why the season has gone the way it's gone. A lot of credit to the Chargers. That was a game that if they'd lost, we'd say, yeah, I understand it. And instead, they went out and they absolutely took care of business. We've got plenty more to come in the form of calling some people out. Let's walk of shame some of the teams that just forgot to show up yesterday, including that guy and that team in Buffalo. Oh, week 10 was wild, and in some cases it was shameful, and we are now going to walk some of those teams down the walk of shame, Caroline, because there was some awful, awful football, and I want to start with the Buffalo Bills. Inexcusable to walk in to Miami, a terrible Miami Dolphins football team that is absolutely falling apart, and not show up. And you can blame the run defense in this team. You can blame Josh Allen, who I thought was at times reckless with the football. You can blame the fact that nobody can. You can blame everybody. Blame the coaches. Number one, when an entire group of 53 people walk on the field like they don't give a damn, I'm looking at you, Sean McDermott, and I'm saying, where was your win one for the Gipper attitude all week? I don't know what's missing from that locker room, but champions shouldn't fall that way, especially with the Patriots on their heels that way. Caroline, I am outraged by how just awful the Buffalo Bills were yesterday. It is inexcusable. They don't deserve to win the AFC East if they're going to play like that. Damn.
You should be outraged. Because how in the world do you go out there and lay an egg like we saw yesterday? I mean, sure, maybe the final score doesn't look as bad as the process was. The Bills got blanked through 3 quarters. The Buffalo Bills, with maybe the number one quarterback in all the land in Josh Allen, against this crap Miami Dolphins team that's already given up on the season, that fired their general manager, that sold at the trade deadline. In fact, they sold their best defensive player at the trade deadline, and you still couldn't get anything moving against this Dolphins defense. I mean, the Dolphins are 26th in the league in yards, rush yards given up per game. 26. They're one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, Fitz, and all they could muster up was 87 yards on the ground. And compare that to the Dolphins' 197. I mean, if you would have told me one team in this game is going to run for 197 yards and the other one's going to run for 87, I would have said it was obviously the Bills. Obviously, the Bills are going to be able to run it well because they've been able to run it well the last several weeks. I think this game was a wake-up call to me, should be a wake-up call to this entire locker room. It's a wake-up call to me of a few things. One, the Bills' offense is too one-dimensional. That if the Bills want to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender, they have to have multiple different facets to hurt you offensively. They don't have that kind of receiver that can stretch the field. Keon Coleman was supposed to be that guy. He's not that guy. And the Bills didn't do anything at the trade deadline to add one of those stretch the field, speedster, burner kind of guys. The Bills don't have a long pass game. What the Bills have is a short dink and dunk pass game and running the football. That works, and that's great and all when opposing defenses don't take that away from you. But what we saw yesterday, when the run was taken away from the Buffalo Bills, they had no offense. So, I just have to question, what is this Bills team? It's a team that can beat the Chiefs but can't beat the measly, crummy, crappy Dolphins?
The frustrating thing I say to you all the time.
Explain that to me.
I say there's a difference between being a playoff team and a good team. Some years you can be in the playoffs and you're not any good. I think for the Bills, there's a difference between being a Super Bowl caliber team because you're just one of the better teams and actually being a great team. And what I saw yesterday was a reminder that the Bills are just not a great team. Speaking of not great, let's get to one individual that was just awful. Walk of shame to Russell Wilson. Oh, my God. If you were watching the Giants game and you were watching the meltdown that was happening in that Giants game, you saw Russell Wilson get in the game. Jackson Dart went out because of concussion protocol. And once Russell was in, actually one of the guys that I was watching football with said, Giants going to lose this football game. And I laughed. No, there's no way. Russ gets in, the entire thing implodes. I have never in my lifetime seen a player play himself out of the Hall of Fame conversation, and that is exactly what Russell Wilson has done in the latter part of his career. He went from being at least a fringe conversation where somebody's going to have to get up and stump for you, but you can make an argument with those Seattle teams. The way it went down, there were people that wanted to make an argument for Russ as a Hall of Famer, and since he left Seattle, all he's done is tell everybody essentially with this play on the field, now we're good. You don't even need to have the debate. It is so clear right now that Russ is washed, but he is so washed that he actually makes the entirety of his body of work seem less than because of what we've seen over the course of the last couple of years. Just stop, Russ, for your own legacy and for every Giants fan out there. Just stop. It's time, dude. It is painful to watch this happen.
When you look at, it's just worse looking at the box score. It feels worse than it felt actually watching that game. Russell Wilson comes in, 3-play drive, 4 yards, punt. Next possession, 3 plays, -8 yards, punt. And we're talking about a game in the last several minutes of the game when the Giants have a 3-point lead. When it is absolute positive crunch time. This is your job as a backup and a veteran quarterback, is just to not do something stupid. And that felt like too much for Russell Wilson. How in the world, like you said, a guy who we've been debating through a majority of his career, is he a Hall of Fame guy? Is he not a Hall of Fame guy? And I use a very scientific way to decide if a guy is a Hall of Famer or not. I just say, is this guy a Hall of Famer? Sure, yeah, or nope. It's just a feeling. It's just a vibe kind of thing. And I think that was very highly debated for a long time with Russ. But after what we've seen from him and his time in New York, really in his time in Denver, ever since the Denver Broncos traded for Russell Wilson, he has been brutal. So yeah, I'm with you. He's played himself out of the Hall of Fame. I think he's played himself out of the discussion of as even like a top half of the league backup at this point.
Yeah, I will just say this. My Hall of Fame metric, equally scientific. I always ask myself, when the schedule comes out at the beginning of the year, did you have to say, oh my God, we got to take on that guy? And if you did,
Yeah.
that says something about who they are. Now, people will say, oh my God, we get to take on that guy. There are fan bases everywhere. They're like, God, I hope Russ plays next week. Jackson Dart in concussion evaluation. I do want to point out that this is the 4th time this year he's been evaluated for a concussion. This is something that Jackson Dart is going to have to work on. He's going to have to figure out how to protect himself. He cannot be the future of any franchise if he cannot stay on the field. And as much as Giants fans are excited about the future of Jackson Dart, something the coaches have got to figure out how to do, Carolina, is get him to protect himself.
Yeah, I always say it's not a coach's fault generally if a quarterback gets hurt. If you quarterback gets hurt, you lose a bunch of games. You can't point the finger to the coach. Injuries are an inevitable part of the game of football. This is one where, though, I can look at Brian Daboll and say, what are you doing to teach your young quarterback to protect himself? You can do everything in your power to protect your quarterback. Give him weapons. Give him a solid offensive line. Coach him up in your offense. But what you have to teach him is also take care of yourself. We can't win games if you're on the sideline. What is Brian Daboll doing with a guy who's kind of a gunslinger and a guy who's willing to put his body on the line, which I think can be a positive thing for Jackson Dart and for young quarterbacks, but you have to teach him how to do that within the confines of not hurting himself and consequently hurting the football team.
All right, one more walk of shame we got to get in goes to the Cleveland Browns. Now, many of you were not watching the Cleveland Browns take on the New York Jets. I commend you for not wasting your time doing it. But for all of you that didn't see it, they were finally at a spot where the Browns could get the ball back, down by a touchdown. Maybe they could make magic happen, and defense jumps off sides. That's the way this game ended. The defense jumped off sides to not even let the Browns get the ball back. This was such a disaster of an effort, particularly by the Browns special teams, but the Browns in general. At one point in the first half, the Jets had negative passing yards, and they were still winning by 2 touchdowns. Like this was just such a reminder of how gross it is in Cleveland right now. And I'm just looking around saying, I have no idea, Caroline, how to fix it.
Deciding not to watch this game is a form of self-care. Like, you are taking care of yourself, and you are protecting your peace. If you say Browns, Jets, no, thank you. Learn how to say no. You'll be better off because of it. It is truly a feat. And I think one of the most impressive things that we've seen from this Browns team so far this season is making the New York Jets look good. Making the New York Jets look good less than a week removed from trading 2 of their 3 best players. How? How do the Browns find a way to do that? How do the Browns find a way to make the Jets look like a competent football team when they are a far cry from that? Just absolutely brutal. And I feel for this Browns fan base. I feel for Myles Garrett. I really do. I feel for Dylan Gabriel. I really do, because this team just feels so uninspiring.
You're going to learn a lot about what the Cleveland Browns truly expect internally when we find out if Kevin Stefanski still has a job. Because by the end of this season, when all the dust settles, and I don't think anything's going to happen during the season, but after the season, when all the dust settles and they look around, if the Browns organizationally truly believed that they had no shot at competing and this year was just a development year, they may keep Kevin Stefanski around, because certainly young players have been developing this year at a rate that could make you very happy about where the future seems to be headed for Cleveland. I think what we're going to find out if Stefanski is still the head coach is that Cleveland always knew that this year was just going to suck, which stinks for fans, but at least then we'd know they have vision. The one thing I'd say is you can go out and fire everybody, but then the question is, why is it going to be any different? You have a 2-time coach of the year in Stefanski. I don't think he suddenly forgot how to coach. So the question is, what has gone drastically wrong? I don't really know the answer to that. I do know that it doesn't appear that they have any long-term solution at the quarterback position. And without that, as we talked about earlier, you can run around in circles all day chasing your tail until you know what you actually have at the quarterback position. I just don't think any solution is easy right now for the Cleveland Browns. All right, we've got plenty of NFL we're going to keep breaking down over the course of the show. But coming up next, we're going to figure out some of the worst in the NBA. Tom Haberstroh going to join us with some interesting news and notes you're going to need about some of the teams that are failing so far in the association. Legion Hoops tweets out, the Clippers are now 3-6 this season. They've lost 4 straight games. What adjustments do they need to make? Winning might be a good adjustment, but you know who might have the answer to that? The host of The Big Number. He's Tom Haberstroh. He joins us right now. And look, we talk a lot of Clippers, but instead of talking about the drama off the court, today we get to talk about the action on the court with some of the worst teams in the NBA. Tom, you've got a game for us, right? Like, you're going to give us some questions, and we're going to see if we can figure out which dumpster fire we're talking about?
Yeah. We're going to play a little guessing game here Monday morning, wake you guys up a little bit, and let's see. We'll start with the first question here. Can you guess the team? Caroline and Fitz, here we go. Guess which team is currently allowing an NBA record 16 three-pointers made per game?
So that would be the worst defense, the most stand-around defense. I'm just watching things happen. I'm not really moving a lot. I don't know, Caroline. I think that makes me think Dallas. I could go Dallas to the Clippers. What do you think, Caroline?
I might defer to New Orleans for every single one.
We've covered all three
of these questions. Okay.
It's neither.
I'll lean Pels.
It's neither. Neither New Orleans or Dallas. On this one, we're going Clippers, the team that is the oldest team in the NBA, 31.7 average age of the roster. According to minutes played, they also give up a record 16 made three-pointers per game, guys, and that is an atrocious number. For a team that last year, they kind of hung their hat on their defensive side of the ball. Jeff Van Gundy took over as, the defensive coordinator on the bench for Tyronn Lue, and they were one of the best defensive teams in the NBA this year. Now they're bottom 5, and a big reason why is they're not getting out to shooters. They are not closing out. They're collapsing defensively and not making sure that they get a hand up. And opponents are making an NBA record 16 three-pointers made per game. And they're playing at an incredibly slow pace. One of the slowest teams, if not the slowest, in the NBA. So when you look at the Clippers, this is not just a tough team to watch because they're old and slow, but they're also the worst at defending the most important shot in the game, the three ball.
What's the margin of difference between the Clippers and the second worst team in terms of defending the three-point shooters? Because at this point, is it so bad? Is the margin so wide that you have to make some changes in Los Angeles? Are there changes looming, or is it just the Clippers by a narrow margin and there's a whole bunch of crap teams in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, it's a narrow margin. Utah's second worst in the league, just right behind them. But I would say for a Clippers team that prides themselves on defense and has every reason not to take this season because they don't own their first-round pick, they're trying to win games. Utah, it's an open question whether they're trying to win games this season because you got Walker Kessler injured out for the season with a torn labrum in his shoulder, and they are one of the teams that many believe are trying to maximize their lottery chances this year. The Clippers don't have that excuse. The Clippers, their defense is atrocious so far to start, and a lot of it, I think, is due to the fact that guys, Bradley Beal, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, they're in and out of the lineup with injuries. And who could have seen this coming? The average age of the team is 32 years old. And so, yeah, we could all see this coming, that a team this old would have a difficulty in defending the three-point shot and getting out to three-point shooters.
Tom, but this comes back to something we were just talking about with the Pittsburgh Steelers, trying to understand where you are versus where you're going versus where your timeline is, right? To your point, this is an old team with a bunch of stars that's not playing any defense and doesn't have a lot of lottery. They're not going to tank. But they're not good enough to win a championship this year. What should the reasonable expectation be for even where we are with the Clippers this season?
Well, they don't really have any young players in which they could trade to go get help, but they do have 2 future first-round picks that they could trade, and Lawrence Frank, the president of basketball operations, is the head decision-maker here, and he's also the top decision maker for a team that is under investigation by the league for cap circumvention. So we've talked about it before on this program. Do the Clippers look at the situation and say, we need some help, and Adam Silver might come down and drop the hammer on us if they find any sort of wrongdoing by Steve Ballmer and the organization. We might lose those future first-round picks if we don't trade them right now. So the sooner that we trade them, the better chance we can actually get a player with those picks. So that might be what they do, is try to develop some sort of trade market for those first-round picks, future first-round picks, and then move them before any sort of investigation conclusion comes to light. And hey, if they need more defenders out there, I'll just throw this name out. Mark Cuban has done a pretty good job defending that organization. So you can find a way to go get him out on the floor maybe and help that three-point defense that has been a dumpster fire. So I got another one for you. I got another.
Yeah, give it to me.
I got the second one here is we talked about defense, three-point defense. Which team has the worst three-point shooting in the NBA? Three-pointers made per game at 9.7, the league worst in this category. Who do you think it is? Fitz?
I'm going to say Pelicans. I'm going to say the Pels are the worst shooting team. Caroline, are you backing me up on this?
I mean, I feel like I have to because that's just like the low-hanging fruit answer. Hey, who's the worst in the NBA
is it the Mavericks?
at
Is
something?
it the Mavericks?
New Orleans? I will go Mavs, though. We'll flip-flop. I will go Mavs here.
Man.
Yeah, Fenton's got this one. She's right. It's the Dallas Mavericks. And who could have thought that a guy like Luka Doncic, who by himself makes a lot of threes and then generates every year just about more three-pointers for his teammates than anybody in the NBA, and they traded that guy, didn't they? Well, now they're reaping what they sowed. The Dallas Mavericks have the lowest made three-pointers in the game right now with 9.7, and they're going with an 18-year-old at point guard, Cooper Flagg, as their point guard. And this, excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. This is one of those things where you're like, duh. We got Cooper Flagg starting at 6'9" as the point guard on most nights, and Klay Thompson shooting under 30%. They got 6 guys with high volume three-point shooting that are shooting actually below 30% this season. It's a really tough watch if you're a Mavs fan, not just because of the Luka Doncic trade, but just the product out on the floor has been really difficult with Cooper Flagg struggling as the point guy. And yeah, we should have expected that. He's 18 years old, and he's not a pure point guard back at Duke or this season. And so this is a team that absolutely needs to figure things out, not just on the floor, but I think Nico Harrison's job, and there are whispers around the league. You read Mark Stein, who covers the Dallas Mavericks for the Steinline Substack as closely as anybody. He is reporting that there is not just zero indication of, the Mavericks might be making a trade. For the first time in Mark Stein's reporting, it kind of feels like the direction is changing in Dallas. And I'm not saying he's going to be fired, Nico Harrison, anytime soon, but this is an awful start for the Dallas Mavericks.
Let's start there then with Nico Harrison, because it's not just the product on the court for the Mavs. It's also comparing it to what you're seeing from Luka with the Lakers. He's averaging 37 points a game. He's looking like a league MVP. It's early, but things look rough. The trade looks even worse now than at the time, if that's even conceivable. What is the leash on Nico Harrison? And is that closely tied to the development of Cooper Flagg?
Yeah, I don't know what he needs to do to get fired at this point, because you would have thought that the trade itself would have been a fireable offense in the light of the trade and how poorly it looked conceived and the performance in the second half of the season, especially when you consider Anthony Davis has been barely healthy for this team. And one of the reasons why you presumably trade Luka Doncic is because he doesn't have great conditioning and he might be an injury risk. You can't say that when you're getting Anthony Davis, one of the most injury-riddled players in the league, who's 7 years older than Luka Doncic. And so when you see that Anthony Davis hasn't played much this season, he's been out several games with an injury, and then you consider that Cooper Flagg is the only saving grace is getting Cooper Flagg by pure luck. It's had nothing to do with Nico Harrison. He said, can you see the vision now? Now people are seeing the vision. Well, if the vision ends up being you're the worst offense in the Western Conference, I think every Dallas Mavericks fan should absolutely try to get this guy out of there, because that can't be the vision. Now, I know he said defense wins championships. He gave that quote to Tim McMahon over at ESPN, but you can't have the worst offense in the Western Conference and expect to be competing. So I expect that Nico Harrison, the boos, the fire Nico chants, if they don't turn it around quickly, I don't know how much longer the Mavs can do this with him at the helm.
I'm just saying, like, ever the cynic, I know, but AD can't stay healthy. Cooper Flag isn't immediately changing the fortunes of a franchise. These are predictable things. These are all predictable things that were out there. It just feels like they lost. Give me one. I know you've got more, and we've got to figure. But there's got to be one here in the Pelicans. We both guessed the Pelicans. There's got to be something on the Pelicans. Tom, come on, give me something.
Well, I'm not going to give it away, but guess which team has the fourth best odds at winning the number 1 overall pick at 12.5%, but actually are trading that pick so they can't even enjoy having a good shot at the best player next year?
I'll take New Orleans Pelicans for 500, Alex.
That's it. Yeah. I'm not even going to go with you, Fitz. It's the answer. That's the answer right here. We got the New Orleans Pelicans have the 4th worst record in the NBA right now at 2-7, and they can't even enjoy the fruits of tanking this year because they already traded this pick. The upcoming 2026 New Orleans pick is going to Atlanta. And if you remember, I know you guys remember this, in the NBA Finals, Joe Dumars, the new head decision maker for the New Orleans Pelicans, one of his first moves as being the president of basketball operations for the Pelicans, is trading their pick in this upcoming draft, the 2026, and giving that pick to Atlanta when you had the chance at basically leveraging this pick. Indiana Pacers traded their 2026 pick, their future 2026 pick, to get into the draft in that year, and then Tyrese Halliburton got injured. So that 2026 pick for the Indiana Pacers, hugely valuable now for the Pacers, but the Pelicans traded their 2026 pick presumably because they thought, hey, we're going to be good this year. We don't need that 2026 first overall pick. And sure enough, they're at 2-7 because Joe Dumars already traded that to Atlanta, and now they can't even control their destiny on that. So with Zion Williamson already injured this season, and they don't have the number 1 overall pick for themselves, this is we talk dumpster fire. This is really, really difficult because at least with Dallas, they can root on winning the lottery again with their pick. They can't even do that in New Orleans with their chances right now going to the Atlanta Hawks.
In a few years, when we're talking about Zion, is he a Pelican? Does it ever develop into something special, Tom?
I think the chances of him moving on are certainly higher now that Joe Dumars is the new president of basketball operations. Because look, if you buy a house, right, you're going to want to change all the stuff in the house to make it look like your own, right? Same thing for Joe Dumars. He is acquiring a team, and he wants to create a team that is his image, and the pieces that he inherited from the previous regime, maybe he wants to make a team in the way that he wants to run it. And Zion Williamson, at this current stage, being as injury risk as he is, I'd imagine that it's going to be tough to build around that guy, especially for a new GM, a new front office lead decision maker like Joe Dumars. So Zion Williamson, if he doesn't get traded at this deadline, I suspect that if they have another lost season with him, that it's going to be tough to expect him to be around long term.
Crazy to think about what we all expected for Zion and where it's turned to. Watch him on the Big Number, obviously. Follow him on Twitter, X Tom Haberstroh. Tom, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for all the great information, my friend. We appreciate you.
You got it, guys. Have a good one.
Good
Appreciate
stuff
you,
from Tom.
Tom.
We'll get better at the game next week. We're gonna nail it next time. I can feel it in my bones. All right, coming up, we can feel it in our bones now. Who's the best team in the NFC West? We do not agree on this. We'll tell you about it next. Football Chops tweets out, Rams versus Seahawks NFC Championship game will be electric. I think there might be some other fan bases in the NFC that would like a word, Mr. Chops, including maybe the Lions and the Eagles. But here's the thing. Both of these teams look electric. Caroline, we do not agree at all on who the best team is in the division, though. Like, to get to the championship, somebody's got to win this division. Who do you think the best team in the NFC West is?
I think the Rams are the best team in the NFC West. I think the Rams are the best team in the NFC. I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the Rams are the best team in the NFL. I mean, the Rams are such a complete team. They can run the ball well. They play great defense. They are so tough and physical up front at the line of scrimmage. And you have a quarterback that's playing the best football of his career. There is a very strong case for Matthew Stafford to be the league MVP this season. I mean, Matthew Stafford has thrown for 13 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in the last 3 games. Matthew Stafford has 25 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions so far in the season. 25 touchdown passes through 10 weeks of the NFL season. That is absurd. I mean, we're talking about Matthew Stafford, who I think is very widely regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, who has played a very long and very successful career in the league. And we're talking about him playing his best football of his career at 37 years old. I think that Matthew Stafford is the number one reason why I think this Rams team is the best team in the NFC, possibly even the NFL. But this Rams team is just so incredibly complete. I can't take a step back and say, okay, well, this is something that the Rams don't do well. This is something that's bad about this Rams team. This is something that this Rams team has to get significantly better at if they want to contend for a Super Bowl. I can't pinpoint one thing on this Rams team that I think is holding this team back from being a legitimate contender.
Yeah, everything you just said is very true. I just think at the same time, the Seahawks are better. Like, I'll take your Matthew Stafford and I'll raise you a Sam Darnold. Right now, Sam Darnold, higher completion percentage, higher yards per attempt, only about 150 yards less than Matt Stafford throughout the course of the season on literally 40 less completions. So you're talking about he is moving the ball downfield. Yes, his touchdown to interception ratio not as good at 17-6. I'll quite acknowledge that. But Sam Darnold is playing at a level where, like, whatever you think of Sam Darnold, the old Sam Darnold, everybody watching, just crumple it up, throw it away. That conversation no longer matters. Sam Darnold right now is playing like an elite quarterback in the NFL. This is why you say, well, we saw what happened last year in Minnesota. I don't care. I don't care what happened in Minnesota. We see bad games by star quarterbacks. It happens. We saw Josh Allen play like trash yesterday. Does that suddenly mean that Josh Allen should be given up on? No. So there are going to be bad games. When you look at what's happening for this Seahawks team, they've got 2 running backs that can go out and beat you. It's driving fantasy football players crazy, but they've got speed on both and they've got power on both. It's really crazy. Kenneth Walker III takes them from the 20 to the 20. They get to the red zone sharp and it takes them in. Jackson Smith and Jigba at this point is every bit the receiver that Puka Nacua is. I put them in the same category. So there isn't even an advantage there. The Shaheed trade, I think, gives them another extra weapon that they can take advantage of in Seattle. And Mike McDonald, the coach of the Seahawks, has put a defensive scheme together that is absolutely electric. I entered this season saying, well, fine, the Seahawks are cute. It's a nice story. It will implode. Every single week. What did we see yesterday? The Cardinals I know, the Cardinals don't get a lot of street cred out there, but we did spend time talking about the fact that Cardinals lost 3 games on the last play. They could be much better than they are. They were down 35-0 in the first half to a Seattle team that barely felt like they were trying at some points. Like, the level of ass-kickery that happened here to me is absolutely electric. So, yeah, Matthew Stafford is elite and Sean McVay is elite, and I don't take anything away from those things. But just right now, neutral field, Seahawks versus Rams, I'm taking the Seahawks. Seahawks are a hot team that's playing wildly efficiently. I think they need more love.
See, I disagree. I would take the Rams on a neutral field and on the Caroline Fenton Sportsbook. If that game, we're getting this game next week, so we're going to see it, played out on the field, which that is quickly becoming the game of the century of the week next week.
Yes.
I would give the Rams just a slight edge. I would make them like a 2.5-point favorite, maybe even a 1.5-point favorite. It would be a pick 'em. So I think my overall takeaway from this conversation is neither of us are wrong. Like, if you want to say who's the better team, the Rams or the Seahawks, I say, yes. Like that, that's what the answer would be, because these 2 teams do look like the 2 best teams in the NFL. But we're going to have Frank Schwab on tomorrow, as we always do. He presents his power rankings. But I think anything other than the Rams being the number 1 spot in the NFL in Frank's power rankings would be wrong. It would be incorrect. And if we want to compare these two teams, because we can fight about this all day long, and again, I don't think either of us would be wrong. When it comes down to it, the two most important figures and positions in the game of football are coach and quarterback. Let's look at quarterback. Sam Darnold completed 10 passes yesterday, threw an interception, and fumbled the ball twice. And look, the Seahawks were able to overcome because they have an elite defense. They were able to run the ball really well. They didn't need Sam Darnold to do anything more than complete 10 passes and turn the ball over 3 times. But against a better team, a team that's not named the Arizona Cardinals, then what does that look like? What does the box score look like? What does the final score look like? Are we nitpicking Sam Darnold's performance just a little bit more because it was either a narrow win or a loss? I trust Matthew Stafford to not do that. Like, Sam Darnold has thrown 3 picks in the last 3 weeks. And that didn't matter because the Seahawks were able to overcome. Either Darnold himself or the rest of the Seahawks team were able to overcome. I trust Matthew Stafford not to make those mistakes that I can't trust Sam Darnold to not make. So I give the edge to Matthew Stafford. And coach, Sean McVay and Mike Macdonald. I like Mike Macdonald a lot. Sean McVay is a better coach. I would take Sean McVay 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. So I defer to the same argument that I always make. Which coach and quarterback duo do I trust more? I think I trust Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay in the coach-quarterback combo more than any other coach-quarterback combo in the National Football League.
And look, I do like the tag team element of this. And you're right, McVay is a bit of a cheat code in all of it. The interceptions, the 3 interceptions for Darnold don't really bother me. Sometimes interceptions comes in packs, and there's a lot that goes into the interception. These two teams play each other twice still this year. So we still have, mentioned they play on Sunday, and then they'll have another matchup. So whichever team deserves it is going to earn it through this process. The Rams have a great defensive front that's played so disruptive this year. Their defense really has been special. So I don't disagree with any of that. I trust Mike Macdonald's defensive scheme as much as I trust Sean McVay's offensive scheme, which is where I do actually like this head coach versus head coach argument, because so often we get, it's, Kyle Shanahan versus Sean McVay is really offensive mind versus offensive mind. So, which guy did they hire to take on the defense that does a better job? I don't know. But Mike Macdonald versus Sean McVay is truly strength versus strength. Which mindset is going to be better? I like a 2-headed monster at the running back position, particularly more for Seattle. I think they're able to run the ball more effectively than Kyren Williams, who Kyren had a big game yesterday for the Rams. There's nothing against that, but I think the Seahawks' ability to run the football, I also trust the Seahawks' offensive line a lot in this process too. So I find myself going back to the ability to be balanced, the ability to win different ways. I hear you when we say, everybody says this is an NFC Championship game. We just had the odds up. I'm not willing to give up on the Eagles. I'm not willing to give up on the Lions. Like the best of the Lions, which we've seen a few times this season, the best of the Lions scares me more than the best of any of the teams that we've talked about. So what's interesting is that clearly, I think the disrespect here when you look at the odds to win the NFC, the Rams, the Eagles, the Lions, we're putting the Packers above the Seahawks. I just don't understand.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
As much as people will come in and say they don't understand why I come in, they're telling me that they're tied. The Packers and the Seahawks are tied. But that's still just blatant disrespect to me to where the Seahawks are. I think the thing that is holding people back from buying in on Seattle is they want to go back to Sam Darnold's poor performance in 2 games last year for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's just, man, are we going to judge, or have we ever sat down and said anything about the bad games of Patrick Mahomes? And I understand it's because it's Patrick Mahomes and he has so many good. But we don't sit here and obsess over the bad games of Lamar Jackson, which we've seen in the playoffs.
Yeah, we do.
We don't, not the same way.
We do obsess over that.
Not until we get to the playoffs. Right now, we obsess to that. In the playoffs, when Lamar plays poorly, people are like, oh, that's why you can't trust Lamar. People don't want to trust the Seahawks today because of the possibility, the if come, as my mom used to always say, the might could in the Southernism. Well, Sam Darnold's going to Sam Darnold at some point. Well, we had to stop saying that about Baker Mayfield, didn't we? At some point, we stopped saying that about Baker. I'm willing to stop saying that about Sam Darnold. Until Sam Darnold goes out and loses my team a football game, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think he's played lights out this year.
I also do wonder how much those odds are indicative of the sports books and the general public give the Rams a slight edge to win the division. So that would put the Seahawks now climbing an uphill battle and having to go on the road in the playoffs, where if the Rams win the division, then they will be able to sit within the confines of SoFi Stadium. Because it's not a very wide margin. I mean, the Rams now are plus 400 to win the NFC. The Seahawks are plus 500. Like, that's not a crazy difference. Same thing in the NFC West. Rams plus 100, Seahawks plus 110. Like, it's not like the sports books are giving the Rams some overwhelming advantage and just completely disrespecting the Seahawks. I think, and maybe I'm totally off base here, I do think the Sam Darnold haters are a much smaller population now than it was maybe at the beginning of the season. That now we have enough of a sample size of Sam Darnold not just being a competent quarterback in the NFL, but looking like a legitimate MVP contender, that I think the general football public is like, okay, all right, Sam Darnold, we see what you're cooking here. And of course, we want to see it come to fruition in the playoffs. Of course, we want to see, Sam Darnold do it in the biggest games that matter. That, again, might be why the Rams are getting a slight edge here, is because we have a proof of concept of Matthew Stafford in the playoffs. We have a proof of concept of this Rams team winning a championship. We don't have that with Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. But I think what the sportsbooks are showing you are exactly what we're talking about right now. The margins are very, very thin. Like, me saying that I think the Rams are going to win the NFC and me saying that I think that Matthew Stafford is an MVP contender isn't because I don't think the Seahawks are a contender or I don't think that Sam Darnold can be an MVP. I just give that slight edge to the Rams because they win in those teeny tiny little margins.
I agree with all of that. It's funny. We could take the same exact take and just quite simply replace our teams. Like, I agree with everything you said.
Totally.
This is going to be a great race all the way down to the wire. All right, speaking of great races, college football gave us a wild weekend. We'll talk to friend of the show, Steven Godfrey. You're going to join us next. We'll see what his bug looks like. Big Ten executives are socializing a plan with member schools to move forward with their capital investment proposal, even without Michigan and USC. That per Ross Dellinger. The league has signaled to schools that it may hold a vote in 2 weeks to potentially adopt a 20-year, $2.4 billion capital deal. We're going to break this down now with Steven Godfrey, who joins us, because I'm be honest, like, I had to read the article like 3 times to try and understand it. Godfrey won't even look at he refuses to look at us right now. He's over us. So we're gonna get him in just a second. We have a technology issue. Caroline, I had to watch or read the article 3 times to try and figure this out. Like, You're talking about private capital being invested and schools voting. And to be clear, in the beginning, the Big Ten said every school would have to be on board, including Michigan and USC. Everybody would have to be on board. Michigan and USC said, no, we're good. We don't want private capital to be any part of the Big Ten. So they said no. And now it sounds like instead the Big Ten is saying, well, we don't really care what you think. We're going to do this with or without you. Godfrey, like, can you help break this down like I'm a 5-year-old? Because I had to read it several times to figure it out. So make me smarter.
No, I'm also a 5-year-old. It's okay. Ross Dellinger educated us on the College Football Inquirer yesterday. The only thing you need to know if you're just a college football fan is that the have-not schools of the Big Ten want to stay tethered to the big brands of the Big Ten and will do anything possible to make that happen. So when I say tethered, I mean that some sort of grant of rights, obligation contractually that like Ohio State and Michigan and maybe in this case USC and Oregon wouldn't leave and join some other bigger super league. Okay, everybody following us so far?
Yeah, got you so far.
Okay. So the grant of rights would extend on this deal. So what Ross is reporting out is that USC and Michigan are saying, hey, we don't like this. This is not money we need. This is not money we want to take. It's a little bit of being wary of capital investment and private equity, but it's also the bigger brands of the Big Ten, specifically USC and Michigan, although I would suspect that you would see behind the scenes Ohio State probably aligning with them more than the rest of the conference, saying, we want to keep our options open here. This doesn't make sense for us. This is a desperate move by the rank and file of the Big Ten to make sure that their like premier brands, their helmet schools, don't leave them in the dust in the next round of realignment in the early 2030s. That's basically all you need to know right now.
So let's move on to the fun stuff then. Let's move on to the football before everybody's eyes glaze over, mine included. Indiana survived a scare at Penn State, and we saw one of the best catches, if not the best catches of the entire season in the last 2 seconds of that game. Insane. I think there's two different ways that you can look at that. One, Indiana found a way to survive and good teams find a way to win. Two, maybe Penn State exposed some cracks in this Indiana team. Which belief do you subscribe to?
I would like to talk about both because I think both will serve Indiana in the long run. Indiana got all of the benefits of the, let's say, culture resetting loss that you have in college football sometimes where, look, 18 to 22-year-olds on a roster, that's a real thing. That's not a trope. You, week to week, have a really hard time sometimes maintaining a culture, maintaining a mentality, keeping guys focused, keeping guys locked in. You had the benefits of that loss without actually losing the game because that drive was like, look, we've seen a lot of game-winning drives in college football, but the amazing thing about that drive was that every single play was sort of a highlight, like every single one. Even on Penn State's side, that drive opens up with a sack of Mendoza. Penn State called a lot of really effective pressures and blitzes all the way down. And what you saw, I'm kind of betting on the fact that Saturday's slate was a little weak and that people were tuning in kind of like, my game hasn't started yet. Oh, there's an upset alert, whatever. Indiana driving down the field might have been the first time that a lot of people saw Indiana, believe it or not, because college football fans are still sort of rejecting this idea of the Hoosiers being elite. Those were NFL players at the skill positions, and they were without their leading receiver, right? This was an NFL quarterback hitting talent guys so far more talented than you've ever seen in an Indiana uniform, just cutting up that Penn State pressure down the field. And then ultimately, yes, one of the most, I don't know if it's like the greatest catch. It's hard to do superlatives. It was certainly physics defying that the momentum allowed him to have the toe in bounds before he kind of went out the back of the end zone. It was amazing.
So now that Indiana gets, let's say they get pushed in this, our producer, Mike, as we were meeting, said, Ohio State's clearly the number one team in the country, right? Are you there, Steve?
Mike.
Are we clearly, is Ohio State clearly the best team in the country?
Is Mike a Buckeye or what are we doing here?
No,
Mike's from Ohio. He's from Cleveland.
He is from Ohio.
There you go. There you go.
I didn't want to disclose that because I thought I didn't want to.
Those people. Those people.
Important to point out. Yeah.
Those people. You know how they are. They are one of the best. They're one of the best programs in college football, and anything past that is probably a semantic argument. Just for fun, since we have to do this incredibly stupid thing on ESPN every Tuesday night where we re-rank it and it doesn't matter in 6 days and we're just doing it for the television so people can argue and we can all pay our mortgages off arguing with each other until something actually happens, I would put Texas A&M number one this week. Only because third-ranked win on the road in conference play against Missouri, but Ohio State, probably the most talented team in the country. I think there's an argument out there that they might have and I don't like to reduce college football to NFL terms, but 3-4 of the most talented players in college football in terms of like a draft evaluation. I think look, let me back up for a second. What Ryan Day has done, it's like the greatest trick the devil ever pulls is like convincing you it's not real. The greatest thing that Ryan Day has done in his time at Ohio State. Do you guys remember in week 1, going into week 1, there was a quarterback race? Do you guys remember that? Like they weren't settled on a starter at Ohio State. Absolute BS. Okay. It was an illusion. It was amazing. When you have the benefit of what Ohio State enjoys, which is the most talented roster in college football, you can take arguably a kid who could end up as the best quarterback in the game and slow play, like I can't take my Southern drawl out long enough. Slow play his development. Go back and look at what they asked him to do and what they asked him, or really what they didn't ask him to do, I should say, against Texas in that win, right? That was a defensive-led win. Arch comes in, hyped to the gills, and they grind out that win. Sayan has done nothing since that point that isn't just a little bit, incremental improvement, right? All these games that, unless you are a Buckeyes fan, you're probably not watching all 4 quarters of. I think there was some slowness on the offense against Ohio, like early September. This team gets better and better. They are, the verb I like to use is slow cooking, crock potting opponents, similar to that early era Saban Alabama. It's not fun to watch. It's not. For as talented as they are, they're kind of boring to watch. It's just boa constrictor football. But that's because, and this really isn't anybody's fault, the Texas game wasn't a shootout. It wasn't really the all-star affair that we thought it would be. And they haven't really played anybody because Penn State imploded. And so they've had this sort of weak schedule leading into what will be like the biggest Big Ten championship and one of the biggest college football games that we've ever had in December in Indianapolis. More than likely, unless one of them loses. But I don't think one of them is going to lose until then.
You bring up Texas A&M. I want to talk about them because you can call it hashtag SEC bias all you want. I would also have Texas A&M as my number 1 team in the country. You go on the road at Notre Dame, beat Notre Dame, and then you have 3 consecutive road SEC victories, including an absolute splattering over LSU. What more does Texas A&M need to do to be viewed as a legitimate national title contender? And also, I'll add Marcel Reed as a legitimate Heisman Trophy contender.
Ooh, okay. I like that one. I think they're fine. I don't think they want to be viewed as any more legitimate than they are at this moment. I think what the best thing that's working for A&M is that somehow undefeated in the Southeastern Conference, they're lost in the shuffle. I think it's good from a narrative standpoint. Look, Mike Elko may go down as one of the best hires the last 15, 20 years in college football. Think about where this program was. They have every advantage possible financially. It's Texas A&M. They handed Jimbo the keys to whatever he wanted. They had a sort of gaudy, if not poorly constructed roster through NIL. Like they paid a lot early. They were early adopters into like, oh, we can pay these kids now. Look out, right? Who wants an oil derrick? Who wants a ranch? So that was great, but it didn't work because he didn't understand what he was doing. Mike Elko is the unglamorous solution to the problems at premier programs. And I'm curious if this is going to replicate in some of the open jobs that we have right now. Mike Elko is not a great quote. He's kind of boring, right? Just kind of this ho-hum football type Jersey guy. And he has A&M at a level of efficiency we have not seen in the modern era. Full stop. You cannot give me a better time, a more consistently successful time at A&M in a single season. It's not there. Johnny Manziel was like a roller coaster that fails a safety inspection. It was fun, but you didn't want to do that every week. And also, they were losing the games that A&M is grinding its way towards. Are they perfect? No. I think they're on equal footing with Alabama and maybe even Georgia, to be honest. But look, they're going to walk into Atlanta provided they beat Texas. I know that's a big provided, but I also don't think it is. Texas has played, Arch has had 1 complete game in conference play. That's it. Like I would default to what Colin Klein's doing with that offense. He's going to be a hot name, by the way, in head coaching circles. The offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, quarterback at Kansas State, if you're old. So I like everything about A&M right now. And if you can somehow be successful and quiet in the SEC in November, you're going to take that every time.
All right, let's go to the opposite side of it. Are we sure the ACC deserves a spot in the college football playoff?
Technically, they don't have to have one. It's the 5 highest rated conference champions. So walk with me for a second while we go through the dregs of college football. We can get the ACC out of here, Fitz. Is that what you're trying to do?
I mean, I just don't want one of these suck teams to find their way in. Go ahead.
These suck teams. All right, you're your UNLV guy, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to what's left of the Mountain West. You could theoretically have one that had San Diego State beaten Hawaii in the middle of the night on Saturday/Sunday. That could have been a case. James Madison only has one loss, and it's to Louisville. Okay. The reason why I'm saying this is in that circumstance, you would have to jump multiple group of 5 programs. The reason why it's not going to happen, Fitz, is that in last Tuesday's ratings, they didn't even have a group of 5 team in the 25. So The Memphis that you saw in the bracket, that's a placeholder. So what the committee did, this is the first time they've ever done this, they said, we rank the 25 best teams in college football. We know it has to be the 5 highest rated conference champions in as a lock, but that actually hasn't happened in our 25. So if that were to happen on the last day of selection, when it actually matters and it's not a dumb TV show for ESPN, you would have to keep ranking. And they will do this. Ross explained this in the College Football Inquirer. Subscribe. Fast Network. Well, you're here right now. Keep doing it. Tell your friends. You have to keep going through like the 30s or potentially 40s to find the next highest, to find the first highest rated G5 team. The problem with the ACC, Fitz, and I'm not saying I disagree with you on the quality, like, because you could have like a 4-loss Duke team win the ACC. That's mathematically possible. And then technically go to the playoff. You would have to have 2 conference champions better than them. And I don't know if that's going to happen this year because it's also not it's not the best year for the group of 5. That's why I maintain right now, if I'm Georgia, I have the sweetest spot in college football. If I'm a Georgia fan, I want to win out, and I want A&M and Alabama to win out. And here's why. I don't have to beat myself up in the SEC championship game. Remember how injured? Do you remember how physical that game was last year against Texas? You lose your quarterback, and then ultimately you lose the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. You don't have to do that. You are in the college football playoff. You've beaten Ole Miss. You have the resume. You'll beat Georgia Tech in my scenario in Atlanta in the same stadium. Skip the SEC championship. Go in as the 5, and then you could play someone like South Florida, North Texas. And this year we don't have Ashton Genty. We don't have a Boise State team that's capable of scaring people. You are going to get as close to a gimme as you can in the playoff bracket as the 5. So that's why the ACC sucks, to go back to what you were saying. I just don't know if we have enough capable conference champions to jump anyone. It's going to end up being, if I had to put money on somebody right now, I'd say it's Georgia Tech. They'll probably grind it out. Although, watch Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is not terrible. They have Notre Dame this weekend. If you can only watch one college football game of consequence for the postseason, this weekend it's Pittsburgh Notre Dame, as we all thought in preseason. We're all going to Old Heinz Field to watch Pittsburgh play college football.
You can watch him on College Football Inquirer. He does great work there, and he's off.
Where's my mug?
Spectacular.
Where's my
Your
mug?
mug is in the mail. Your mug is in the mail. I personally mailed your mug.
I'll believe it when I see it, Fitz.
Okay. You know what? You know what? Your mug and a thank you card were both in the mail. So, like, I expect full acknowledgement when you get it.
Still tea, by the way.
How good my penmanship is. Sure.
Fitz is going to be blaming that pesky USPS for you not having a mug on your doorstep.
Just checked with the front desk in my building. No package from Fitz. And yet I still do the show.
Government shutdown. It's just all comes back to a government shutdown. That's the only thing I question. Let's see. Now we made it political. Now we got to let him go. Steven Godfrey.
Y'all next week.
Twitter X. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks. Have a great week.
All right. Thank you.
Great stuff from him. All right. He's an MVP for joining the show. Question is, who's the MVP of the NFL? You might be surprised at who isn't. We'll tell you next. Check out the MVP odds in the NFL via BetMGM, and you'll see right there. We already talked about Matt Stafford at plus 275, but sitting there in the 2 spot, depending on the sports book, some places have him even higher. Drake Maye is right there. New England is 8-2. Caroline Fenton, you buying this Drake Maye MVP?
Yeah. Yes, I'm buying it. I'm absolutely buying that Drake Maye should be in the MVP conversation because I say the same thing about Super Bowl contenders, MVP caliber players, whatever it might be. If you beat someone in the conversation, you get to be in the conversation. We've been talking about Baker Mayfield as an MVP contender going back to week 1. Drake Maye just beat Baker Mayfield in the Tampa Bay Bucks yesterday. So when you beat an MVP contender, you get to be in the conversation. And Drake Maye has also been doing this, willing New England to an 8-2 season so far, the number 1 spot in the AFC East at this point. Drake Maye has been doing this in year 2 with kind of a lack of elite playmakers around him. Stephon Diggs has had a career renaissance this year in New England. Credit to Stephon Diggs for that, but I think that's also credit to Drake Maye. Your wide receiver is only as great as your quarterback is, so credit to Drake Maye for that. And then you're doing it with Kayshon Boutte and friend of the show, love him, Matt Collins. But I don't think that wide receiving core necessarily breeds a whole lot of fear in opposing defensive coordinators. And you're also doing it with a rookie left tackle in Will Campbell, and albeit one of the best left tackles in this past draft class, but still that's a rookie left tackle that's getting acclimated to the level of play in the NFL. So I think Drake Maye, not just what he's doing and the numbers that he's putting up, but when you also add into the fact the lack of elite pieces around him and a coach in Mike Vrabel, albeit a veteran coach in this league, but he's still in his first year in New England. I was a Drake Maye doubter and a Patriots non-believer this season. I thought that the sports books and the national media were hyping up this team far more than they deserve to be. I'm wrong. I will say I was flat out wrong about Drake Maye and this Patriots team. Because this Patriots team, why not? Why can't they be in the conversation? And if they're in the conversation, why can't Drake Maye be in the MVP conversation?
So, and look, I was wrong too. I was wrong about the Patriots. And I said coming into this game over the weekend that this would be the one that really, whatever doubts you had left, you had to wipe away if they went in and took care of business against Tampa Bay. That's exactly what they did.
They did.
And Drake Maye has been spectacular. But this entire award system is broken. And it's broken because you're not wrong, right? Like Drake Maye is going to be a favorite for the MVP, just like Matt Stafford is. And part of that's going to be the greatness, but part of it's just going to be the inevitability of the quarterback position because we look at quarterbacks as everything for every franchise, and rightfully so because they touch the ball so much. And I understand that, but you can't watch football in my mind over the weekend and not just step back and say, wait a minute. We need to have a Jonathan Taylor conversation. I know he's a running back, but 244 yards just on the ground, 287 yards from scrimmage overall, 3 touchdowns yet again. In fact, so far this year, this is just so far this year for the Colts. We're nowhere near the end of this season. Right now, Jonathan Taylor has 1,139 yards rushing already. He's averaging 6 yards a carry right now. He has 15 touchdowns just on the ground so far this year. And there's still half a season to go. Like, to me, what we have to do at some point is figure out a way to separate these because by value, there's nothing more valuable than a quarterback all the time. So I understand the concept, but at some point, we have to find a way to acknowledge it, that not with Offensive Player of the Year, not with those sorts of awards. We need to find an award that has the same level of cachet to the entire NFL system as MVP for non-quarterbacks. That's why, we need an NFL MVNQ, most valuable non-quarterback. There has to be a way to let all of the defensive players that are epic and all of the offensive players that are epic and all of the people that are making a massive difference to their team still be recognized while also acknowledging that nobody's more important to a sport and a team and a future and a franchise than a quarterback. So the system is so broken that, yes, Drake Maye very deserving, Matt Stafford very deserving. They're all deserving quarterback what Drake Maye is doing for the Patriots this year is incredible. But when you look at just absolute history being made by Jonathan Taylor, and then you remind yourself that even last year, in an epic year where Saquon couldn't get the consideration he deserved for the MVP, it's a reminder that the concept of MVP is broken because by the way it's designed, only quarterbacks ever get real consideration.
To be fair, I do feel like MVNQ, most valuable non-quarterback, is offensive player and defensive player of the year. But yes, you are right that Opoy and Depoy are not viewed in the same kind of level of cachet as MVP. Of course not, because MVP, you are the league's most valuable player. But to your point about Jonathan Taylor, if you take away Jonathan Taylor from the Colts and insert average running back, good, solid, okay, nothing to write home about, but guy that can just get it done. The Colts are probably still leading the division, but they're not where they are now. They're not legitimate Super Bowl contenders. They're not viewed as one of the best teams in the league, which is what they are right now. I view MVPs, if you take this player away, that team is an entirely different football team. That's exactly what Jonathan Taylor is. Credit to Daniel Jones. Credit to this Indianapolis offensive line. Credit to this Indianapolis Colts team for being able to piece this season together from going of the kind of just mucky middle of the NFL to now at the top of the league. Credit to all of them, but none of that would be possible without the efforts of Jonathan Taylor. So I'm with you. Jonathan Taylor needs to be in the MVP conversation. Jonathan Taylor deserves to get those kinds of nods. It is just such a quarterback-driven league. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you can agree or disagree with that all that you want, but it is such a quarterback-driven league. But I will say, I think that we weight MVP differently. Yeah, you go ahead.
One thing on that, because I hear you that Opoy and Depoy are important awards. Justin Jefferson won Offensive Player of the Year in 2022. Who cares? We care as people in media, and when the Hall of Fame conversation comes up, it'll be brought up. But there is something about saying Lamar Jackson is a 3-time MVP or whatever, 2-time MVP. Like any of these conversations we have about how many MVPs somebody has won has so much different cachet. Like Christian McCaffrey was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2023. Who even remembers that? When they introduce these players on the broadcast, when they're talking about them on the broadcast, do they ever sit there and say, oh, former Offensive Player of the Year, Derrick Henry, gets the ball? No. But former MVP, Lamar Jackson, we hear it over and over and over again. So at some point, the problem is there is no way to give the same level of cachet and importance in conversation to Offensive Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. It doesn't matter how many times Myles Garrett wins Defensive Player of the Year. That hits different when people talk about it. And during broadcasts, during sports bar conversations, when you're sitting at the barbershop, nobody's ever saying, aha, he did win Offensive Player of the Year. It just doesn't work. So the concept is so failed because we as a society only care about the MVP. And if the MVP is only going to be a quarterback, how do you ever find a way to give value to Jonathan Taylor? Jonathan Taylor is absolutely, at this point, having the sort of season that could end up in the record books forever. And at some point, they'll also, in 20 years, when they're trying to put context around it, the fact that the letters MVP aren't next to this season will be a reason some people downgrade it. And
to your point, Saquon Barkley probably deserved to be MVP last season. It was a two-dog race last year, and Saquon wasn't even in that race. So yes, that there needs to be more context to give running backs and receivers. Receivers never won the award. There probably needs to be more context, but I will say, if a running back wins MVP, that carries significantly more weight in my mind for that player's resume, for their Canton resume, than a quarterback winning MVP. If a running back wins MVP, I think that is an automatic ticket to Canton. Because you, as a running back, were able to have such an impactful season that you were able to beat out 32 other quarterbacks in the league for the award. Versus if a quarterback is a one-time MVP, that's great and that's wonderful, and we'll talk about it and remember it forever. That's not an automatic golden ticket to the Hall of Fame. But if a running back wins it, in my eyes, he's in Canton.
And you mentioned wide receivers. Jackson Smith-Njigba right now, look at the numbers that we see on odds for most valuable player. You don't even see Jackson Smith-Njigba. And JSN is on pace right now for an absolutely historic season, and he just never even has a chance. I mean, there's not even
Sam Darnold would get it over JSN.
Chance. 100%. That's the problem for wide receivers. Anytime every yard a wide receiver gets is the yard the quarterback gets it through to him. So, it's broken. It's almost like we need individual, maybe maybe what I'm looking for is no MVP at all. Just give me quarterback of the year, offensive player of the year. Eliminate MVP altogether, because if we're just going to make it the quarterback, then let's just make a new award for quarterback of the year, because you can't tell me Jackson Smith-Njigba isn't having the sort of season that will be discussed if he's ever involved in a Canton vote. He's having the sort of season that absolutely should be that landmark moment that puts him in the MVP conversation. He's not even on the sheet when you talk at the top odds. Like, it's just wild. There's no way for him to get recognized.
But I think we have to also, you're playing a dangerous game if you want every award in the NFL to carry the same amount of weight as MVP. You know, there's a reason why MVP is so coveted. There's a reason why we view MVP in a different light than any other award. Same thing with all pros. Like, it's great and all if you go to the Pro Bowl. I hope that you enjoy flag football, but being an all pro, like, that carries a different level of weight. If all of these awards are given the same amount of cachet and weight and, just like we view it as illustrious as we do all these other awards, then how are we supposed to differentiate one year from another, one season from another? I think there needs to be a world where some awards are more important than others. No?
Yeah, there does, but only if we're going to allow everybody to have fair equity towards that award. Like, I'm not trying to make participation awards here. I'm just saying that, like, if the MVP is only going to be about court, like, a lot of people don't even realize this. There's a new award this year for Protector of the Year for the best offensive lineman in the NFL, right? Like, because at some point, how do you just reward greatness across the path? And I don't know the answer to that, but I know that if the MVP is always only quarterbacks, the system is absolutely, to me, going to continue to be broken. All right, we got a lot to continue to break down, including Monday Night Football tonight, an epic matchup between the Eagles and the Packers. Also, some interesting trade drama we'll tell you about coming up. Interesting nugget we found out over the weekend. Micah Parsons' trade to the Packers included a poison pill that the Cowboys inserted to block a deal in the near future to the Eagles. If the Packers decide to trade Parsons to a team in the NFC East Division, Green Bay would owe Dallas a 2028 first-round pick, and that is all because of the epic sort of hunt for Micah Parsons that the Cowboys felt like the Eagles were on over the course of the offseason. Caroline, we giving Jerry Jones some credit for getting this done?
Honestly, I will a little bit. I will, because Jerry Jones is nothing if not petty. I think about this. So my older sister graduated from the University of South Carolina, and at South Carolina football games, every single game, whether it's a touchdown, first down, no matter who they're playing, they say, go, fight, win, kick butt, F Clemson. No matter who they're playing. They could be playing Tennessee. They could be playing St. Mary's School of the Blind. They always say, F Clemson. I feel like this is Jerry Jones's way of saying go, fight, win, kick butt, F the Eagles. Like, no matter what Jerry Jones does, no matter what transaction it is, no matter what day is it, no matter what season it is, Jerry Jones wakes up thinking, how can I make the lives of Philadelphia Eagles fans miserable today? And I have to give him at least a little bit of credit here. He's petty and he will always find a way to say, you know what? Screw you, Philadelphia.
Look, I love this. I think Saquon deserves a little bit of the credit for this too, because if you just sat there and watched Saquon absolutely go back at the Giants over and over and over again, and you're Jerry, you're like, nope, not today, not up in here, not happening. Also,
not today.
They put the poison pill on the opposite side of this deal. Also, Kenny Clark cannot be traded back to anybody in the NFC North, or Chicago would then get a compensatory pick in 2028. So I feel like once Jerry, or we never know who proposed first here, but once Jerry puts in the poison pill, it's like, all right, well, we want one and the same. I like this level of petty, but it reminds us, as much as fans sit down and come up with mock trade scenarios all the time, it truly does remind you that for these owners, they are passionate about making sure certain teams don't have access to their players. Like we think all the time, well, there's no way this. No, this is Jerry Jones flat out telling you, I'm going to make sure Michael Parsons does not get in my own division in the next 3 years, come hell or high water. I respect that.
I really do too. Hey, I think that this was a moronic trade. I never would have done it. I think it'll go down. We will view this trade as one of the worst ones in the history of the NFL. And I have said before, and I'll say it again a million times over, as long as Jerry Jones is calling the shots in Dallas, the Cowboys won't even sniff a Super Bowl. But I do like this a little bit. I really do, just for the pettiness factor. Just because I know that the Eagles live rent-free in that man's head, and he will until the day that Jerry Jones is no longer with us. I like it. I appreciate it.
We know that Jerry's going to have his eyes on the game tonight. We get Eagles versus the Packers, and this just feels like a big statement game for the Packers to me, because I don't think any of us really know. Like, we bend over backwards trying to give a lot of benefit of the doubt to Jordan Love, but the fact to me is, like, there are times that Jordan Love looks good. There are times that Jordan Love just doesn't look good. There's times that this offense seems to be out of sync. I said last week I would love to see Jordan Love play more within just the offense as it's designed to try to do less. And now he's going to have this Eagles defense coming at him tonight. And this just feels like the sort of game that the Packers are going to have to, they're going to have to show everybody if they actually belong in this NFC conversation with this game tonight.
It would be so Buffalo Bills of the Green Bay Packers to follow up a loss at home against the Panthers to then beat the Philadelphia Eagles, who we all view as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. You following me on that one? Be very Bills of them. Yeah, very Jekyll and Hyde, very hot and cold, very lose to a crap team, and then beat a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But that's kind of who the Packers have been. They have been so consistently inconsistent. That's how Jordan Love has been, just so hot and cold. So yes and no. So, very Katy Perry of him. But I want to see some consistency from Jordan Love. I want to see some consistency from this Packers team, because we have seen them look like the best team in the league at sometimes. And then we've seen them just lay these massive eggs. Like, the fact that they've lost to the Panthers and the Browns is just totally inconceivable and totally just indescribable, how a team can have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. This is an opportunity for the Packers to prove to all of us that, hey, when we play at our best, we can beat anybody in the NFL. And when we don't, we can lose to anybody in the NFL.
Well, and this is my weekly reminder that while sirens continue to go off and people want to talk about the drama in Philadelphia, they're 6-2. Eagles are just sitting here right here at 6-2. Like, oh my God, AJ's not happy. Devontae's actually better than AJ. Oh, the passing game is broken and nothing looks right. And oh my God. Now, and it should be noted tonight, we get the tush push against the team that tried to propose the ban on the tush push. Like, I don't know. I just feel like tonight can be really simple. Tonight can be really simple. It can be about the Eagles walking in and just reminding us all that the Philadelphia Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions. They're 6-2, and they're the Philadelphia damn Eagles. Like, at some point, we're going to have to put some respect on this 6-2. We're going to have to put some respect on where they are. We've spent time in this show talking about the fact that the Rams and the Seahawks and the Lions all look like Super Bowl contenders, and the Eagles are like, hey, just FYI, defending Super Bowl champions, and we're 6-2. I'm just saying this could be an opportunity, Caroline, for a statement from the Eagles.
It's an opportunity for a statement from both of these teams. But if I'm the Eagles, I'm looking at the Eagles' schedule upcoming right now. Obviously, they'll play the Packers tonight. And then on a short week, they turn around and play the Lions. And they get the Lions at home, but it's still the Lions nonetheless. So let's say the Eagles have a weird game. They slip up. The Packers, look like the best version of the Packers. They're able to find a way to win. Then if the Eagles turn around again, short week, hosting the legitimate Super Bowl contender Detroit Lions and drop that game, well, all of a sudden 6-2 turns into 6-4 quickly, and you're starting to feel a little bit uncomfy about where you stand. But then, of course, then the Eagles have the Cowboys and the Bears and the Raiders, no offense, Fitzy, and the Commanders, maybe with or without Jaden Daniels. So there's plenty of opportunities for the Eagles to get right later in their schedule. But if you want to look at the short future, this feels like a really great opportunity for two statements in the next 2 weeks against the Packers and Lions, respectively.
Speaking of statements, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Gregg Rosenthal, you watch him on NFL Daily, going to join us. We'll see what he thought of some of the big statements over the course of the weekend. That Texans win is up there for dumb fun game of the year, 26-0 fourth quarter. That's well said by Gregg Rosenthal. You watch him on NFL Daily. He joins us right now. Greg, I'm going to be honest, man. I'm trying to figure out what in the heck happened to the Jags because this was just a wild meltdown. Try and make sense of it for me.
I think Liam Cohen said it best when he didn't say anything. He just slammed. He took off his belt. He took off his headset. He threw something else on the ground. Then he saw one of his assistants picking up the stuff, felt bad about it. Then he started picking it up. Like, they have had no pass rush, and that's what he mentioned in the post-game press conference in terms of their defense and giving up 26 points. I guess the last 6 were from the Texans defense. But giving up that many points to Davis Mills in the fourth quarter says you have major problems. But also Trevor Lawrence on a few of those plays, I think, reminded you why he just this year hasn't been the guy. He's actually gotten worse with Liam Cohen, which surprises me.
Yeah, I want to stick there with Trevor Lawrence. I have a very hard time putting my finger on who Trevor Lawrence is, what Trevor Lawrence can bring to the Jacksonville Jaguars. At this point in Trevor Lawrence's career, what is he to you?
He's just the guy, which is crazy for a number 1 overall pick. He's a guy with a great ad campaign. I do feel bad for Adidas when went so big on those Travis Hunter, Trevor Lawrence commercials. But
that is a precious
each
commercial.
They're kind of great commercials, and now Hunter's hurt and Lawrence is struggling. He's had coaches that, to me, have tried to elevate him, and he does not elevate the people around him. I don't know if it's a guy who's not winning before the snap, but you're not seeing like that talent come out.
Is he the Is somebody going to make Trevor Lawrence their quarterback next year? Like, is he still in Jacksonville long term?
I think if he continues to play at the level that he's at right now, he will be playing for a different team next year because I think Liam Cohen is going to want his own quarterback in Jacksonville. And I do think there would be a market, maybe a Trevor Lawrence for Kyler Murray swap, something like that.
Yeah, what would the return for Trevor Lawrence be? Like, can you
Oh,
get a
man.
first? Can you get multiple firsts for Trevor Lawrence?
I love Jags fans, and I do not want to get in trouble with them. They're going to be all in my mentions if they hear this one. Look, they are not giving up on him yet. They are hoping the rest of this season can go well. I think if he was up for grabs, yeah, he's a guy that could be worth a first-round pick. The problem is that contract is not an asset. I know they've paid some big money on the front end, but all these top quarterbacks, and Kyler Murray is in there. Like, there's so little difference between Kyler Murray and Trevor Lawrence's contract and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes' contract that if you're in that middle tier of quarterbacks and you're getting that much money, it is not an asset. So he would be a tricky guy to trade, and that would be a tricky thing to like figure out publicly as well, whether you do that publicly or it's quiet behind the scenes.
All right, let's stick in the South, but go to the NFC side of things. The Saints, I think, shocked the world yesterday, taking down the Carolina Panthers. Tyler Shuck, the 26-year-old rookie, actually looked pretty solid. How would you evaluate Tyler Shuck and what he added to the Saints team? Like, is there a world where he's their future?
There is a world, and there's certainly a world where he looks good enough over the last 7 weeks that they just don't draft a quarterback this year. That they look at it like if they have a top pick in this draft, and they'll be up there somewhere, that they build around Shuck for now and leave open the door for getting their quarterback in 2026. I actually thought he looked pretty good in the Rams game too when you broke him down play by play. So it's a very solid start to the Tyler Shuck era for the Saints.
Yeah, by the way, don't look now for everybody that's already watching your draft standings. The Tennessee Titans would be the first overall pick as of today for the second straight year. There we go. It's going to be a wild year. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum from bad to good. Yeah, I know. Dan Campbell took over play calling. The Lions, again, look dominant. But the Lions have been kind of up and down. So what do we make of the Lions right now?
The fact he took over play calling in the week that they were playing the Commanders, who have basically been the second worst defense in the league, to the Bengals since week 6 or so, was convenient. I liked seeing him with the glasses and everything. It was working, and it reminds me of his first year as head coach when he took over for Anthony Lynn. If you peek behind the numbers, and I know they scored a lot of points, the explosive play rate and especially the run game has not been the same this year. We really will only know when they're tested against better competition like they will next week. So I'm really curious to see, how they do in that game against the Eagles, especially the run game. To me, that is the bellwether for the team. Are they consistently getting 4, 5, 6 yards? They actually were below average in success rate on the ground going into that game against the Commanders. That was a good get-right game. We know they're going to be good enough to be right in the mix for the NFC North, but they have, their sights higher than that.
And when this Lions team is playing at their peak, I think they can beat anybody in the NFL. Obviously, the Eagles are in that conversation in the NFC as well. But where things stand, it feels like it's the Rams and the Seahawks. And we had this debate earlier on the show about who is the best team, not just in the NFC West, but maybe even possibly in the NFC. Between the Rams and the Seahawks, we'll see that settled on Sunday. But right now, who would you give the edge to, not just in the division, but in the NFC in its entirety?
Yeah, I've been honking about the Seahawks being the most complete, best team in the NFL for a little while now. So I'm biased. I'm always going to just root for my takes to be right. But I really think because of their explosive offense, because of the offensive line, combined with the defense, that I would not take any defense in the entire NFL over Seattle. I would give them the edge. You're still thinking about Sam Darnold in absolutely huge games. And I wouldn't put necessarily the Rams and the Seahawks anywhere in a different class than the Eagles, Lions, or even Packers. To me, like, the NFC is much better this year, and I think all 5 of those teams, if you put them in the AFC, might very well be the favorite.
And it's interesting because you mentioned the Eagles to me. They're like, I just said this as we were talking about Philly, but when's the last time we had a defending Super Bowl champion that's 6-2 that it just feels like is lost in the collective mindset of most people talking about football right now?
Especially when they're this talented. It's not like they're some ragtag bunch. They have Hall of Famers on the offensive line. They have a potential Hall of Famer in A.J. Brown. The defense is coming along. They've won 2 straight. And so these next 2 weeks in primetime are going to be really exciting to watch them. But I've watched enough of these seasons to know that what's happened so far doesn't really matter that much. It's about getting in position. It's about having great players, good coaching staff. They've already shown that they can be that team. So let's say they split these next 2 games, have a good rest of the season. They are going to be as dangerous as anyone heading into the playoffs.
And while we're in the conversation of the NFC, you brought up the Packers. Now, they are coming off of a weird loss to the Carolina Panthers, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Packers turn around and either give the Eagles a really close game or even beat the Eagles. This team is so wildly inconsistent. How do you rationalize this Packers team?
Yeah, they're a team. We gave an award to them of just like they make us say, "What?" It's like, what are they? Last week on our show, and I think the defense is, in the end, going to be consistent enough. Now, they have some issues at the cornerback position, but I think they can solve that. It's really the offense which needs to be special. And the running game hasn't been consistent enough. I want to see them kind of rely on Jordan Love more. I know they've had injuries at receiver. The Jaden Reed injury, which has lasted all year, I think has had a sneaky big effect. Obviously, they're not getting Tucker Kraft back, but I do think it's time to just count on Jordan Love because the running game is not quite what it was a year ago.
Okay, let's move over to the AFC. Baltimore wins. Are they back? Like, we good? We're all just going to hop on the Ravens train now?
More or less, yeah. I'm hopping back on it. I mean, they're in the AFC North, which weirdly is one of the worst divisions in football. I never would have expected that, but I think the Steelers are there for the taking. And the Ravens now, have lasted 4 straight games, I think, without allowing 20 points on defense. And that's the recipe. The offense hasn't been all the way back, to answer your question, Jason. Like, I do want to see that. That's a tough matchup that they had against Minnesota. They were moving the ball. They didn't score touchdowns for a while. The offense isn't all the way back, but that's the recipe for them. If they're going to win or make the Super Bowl, it is top 5, top 3 offense with a good enough defense. And I will get to the point now where I say the defense is back to good enough. They're not a tire fire. They're good enough. So it's on Lamar Jackson and this offense to keep improving, and they've been on the road to doing that.
Death taxes in the Baltimore Ravens. They're just inevitable. But the team that they beat yesterday, the Minnesota Vikings, I believe that panic is a spectrum, not necessarily a button, but a spectrum. Where are you on the JJ McCarthy panic spectrum?
Oh, I'm very low. I love that phrase. I want to steal that. I feel like Vikings fans disagree. Yeah, thank you. Vikings fans it's not a spectrum for them. I don't know if there's a fan base in the NFL that gets higher after wins or lower after losses. And they think they're going to the Super Bowl after last week, and they're completely panicking now. But watching him, to me, like, the operation's not good. He looks like a very young, immature quarterback, which he is for the most part, age compared to guys like Michael Penix and Bo Nix. But he's made more than enough plus impressive plays, I think, over the last couple of weeks to at least say, okay, we got something here. Let's build on that. Now, are we building on it to make the playoffs or make a playoff run this year? I kind of doubt it. So in terms of panic of the 2025 Vikings, I guess you could be a little higher on the spectrum, but I'm not panicking at all.
Let's talk about something that you shouldn't panic about at all. Tulane football. Come on. Like, how many shows are asking about Tulane football? They beat number 2 Memphis, or number 22 Memphis. Memphis wishes they were number 2. At this point, Tulane, group of 5, they headed to the college football playoff. Do you want to see Tulane in the college football playoff?
What are you talking about? Of course I do. I mean, the last time they were playing a Power 5 team in a big spot, they're taking down Caleb Williams in the Rose Bowl, one of the greatest comebacks in college football history, in my mind. I love that you asked me about the Green Wave. If they win out and they win the conference, I feel like they'll have about a 50-50 chance of making it. But that's a big if to win the conference championship.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I'm with you. By the way, I think they have way better than 50-50 chance. I think they can win out. I think they have a pretty good shot at making this thing. I'm just not sure. Like, look, full transparency, like, I've got the UNLV helmet behind me. Like, I'd love to see UNLV in a college football playoff game until the game kicks off and it's like 42-0 in the second quarter. And then I'm like, oh, this wasn't fun. So I wasn't sure, Greg. I just wasn't sure.
I will say, yeah, they were much better. What was that, 4 years ago now, when they did make the Cotton Bowl? Like, this team will get blown out if they make it, most likely. They played Ole Miss earlier this season, and it was a boat race. And you're right, it was not a very fun game to watch.
But that's okay. Just throw that one out. It feels like forever ago at this point.
We beat Duke. We beat Northwestern. Right? Like, Tulane, the students might not have been able to get into Duke and Northwestern, but for 1 year, we beat them on the football field. So those are our.
You can win the Nerd Bowl. That's all
Yes,
that matters.
exactly.
Hey, you can beat up on these high academic schools. Okay, speaking of your time at Tulane, you're a Tulane graduate. Your roommate at Tulane, comedian Anthony Jeselnik. We have any fun
Yes.
roomie stories in your time in New Orleans?
No, none that I can say here, but we're still buddies. He's the godfather to my parents. He's out here in LA. We used to do a podcast and everything together. And I will say, as dark and horrible as he seems on stage, he's a good guy in real life. So I'm not gonna talk any trash about him from Tulane.
Love
No,
it.
I
Love
mean,
it, love it.
we didn't figure you'd have any trash stories. It's just got to be interesting having a roommate that's a famous comedian. So
I
it
mean,
just
I
feels
was
like we
funnier
always
than he was in college. I try to remind him of that all the time. We just went different paths. I just stopped growing like I was like a Tulane quarterback who couldn't make it to the NFL, and he was just blossoming. But I like to say I was funnier back then.
I just tried to help you not talk trash, and then you just let him know that you're funny. All right, you guys can obviously watch him all the time on NFL Daily. Greg, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the insight.
Yeah, great talking
Thanks,
to you guys.
Greg.
See you.
It's great stuff from Gregg Rosenthal. And Caroline, I think one of the things that's really interesting is that we need to, after talking to Greg, I think we need to maybe all just realize how stacked the top of the NFC is. If there's any big takeaway from this weekend, as much as we like to make things about, hot takes and good or bad, what really hits me is that not knowing what we're going to get tonight. The Eagles, the best of the Eagles can win a Super Bowl. The best of the Lions can win a Super Bowl. The best of the Packers can win a Super Bowl. The best of the Rams can win a Super Bowl. The best of the Seahawks can win a Super Bowl. Like, that's pretty incredible to sit where we are right now in the NFC, and I'm sure I've left somebody else. And just off the top of my head, give out 5 or 6 teams that are completely capable of winning a Super Bowl. Like, this is a year of unprecedented, really good teams at the top of the NFC. There's a lot of suck. We watch a lot of bad games.
There's a lot of suck.
But the good teams have really started to separate themselves into this little pack of their own, and it's going to be nearly impossible to figure out who should win out of that group.
And I also think there's maybe a next tier down group in the NFC that can give any of these true legitimate contenders a tough out in the playoffs. Like, does anyone think that Baker Mayfield and the Bucks can mess around and upset the Eagles or the Lions in the playoffs? I think so 100%. Same thing with the 49ers. Their defense is a shell of themselves, but we've seen the 49ers, play at a high level, maybe higher than they should based off of the level of where their roster is at right now. I think on any given Sunday, the 49ers can mess around and beat a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the postseason, even though at this point, I don't view those teams necessarily as Super Bowl contenders. The Bucks maybe prove me wrong. The 49ers, I don't, just because they're so banged up. But any of those teams, I think, that are going to find themselves in the playoffs in the NFC could find themselves, on the better side against one of these legitimate teams. That's not something that I can say in the AFC, though. Like, I think the Chargers, the Steelers could find themselves in the playoffs, but I don't view those teams as a team that can make any sort of noise in the postseason against legitimate AFC contenders.
No, I think part of the hard part for the AFC, no, you're right. The AFC is also, I'm watching teams that should be right now getting better and better and better just fall apart. Like, watching the Bills come out so lackluster this late in the season, just that doesn't compute with my brain, right? Like, to the point we've seen so many injuries for the Chargers, so maybe they're not themselves. Like, part of the reason it feels like maybe the Patriots are separating is because they're at least continuously right now playing good football. Like, they're playing to the point that every week you watch them, you're like, oh, this is getting better and better and better. They're getting more and more dominant. And it feels like while they're getting more and more dominant, almost everybody else is just raising more questions. Like, I want to believe that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to go on this epic run because it makes sense in my mind logically, but we haven't seen that necessarily. Like, we've even got Mahomes coming up and saying, hey, we've really run out of wiggle room and we've got to get tighter. We've got to execute better. Like, to have that message, we're in November. We're not in September. And what's crazy to me is that we're seeing wild consistency from the best of the NFC, and we're seeing wild inconsistency from the best of the AFC. And it's why I'm developing trust issues with that conference.
Yeah, it's fair. I think we all have trust issues with that conference. And we are such a quarterback-obsessed society. But we just talked about that with the MVP, that it's such an uphill battle for any position that's not quarterback to win an MVP award. And the elite quarterbacks that we have in this league, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, all of their teams are wildly inconsistent. So maybe this season is a sample size where we step back and say, yes, every team in the league would want an elite quarterback, but all of these teams with elite quarterbacks, even though we do give them the benefit of the doubt, I give the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt. I'll give the Bills the benefit of the doubt. I trust the Rams, the Lions, and the Eagles so much more than I can trust any team in the AFC. I don't think there is a truly great team in the AFC today.
Yeah, you're right. You've said it so perfectly. There are players I trust in the AFC, but I don't trust their teams to not let them down. There are teams I trust in the NFC. We'll keep breaking it down tomorrow right here at 9 a.m. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks so much for watching. Come back tomorrow for more Yahoo Sports Daily right here.